Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to talk about a few firearms that when they were available on the US market, you couldn't give them away. They wouldn't sell very well. They just weren't popular. That was until they stopped production or importation of them, and then all of a sudden they just doubled in value or more. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you guys would like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best possible way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Follow that over to Patreon, check out some of the perks, and consider supporting us on Patreon. With that said, let's take a look at a few interesting rifles and talk about why possibly were they unpopular at the time, but suddenly became popular after their demise. First, I want to apologize if you guys hear a little bit of a noise in the background. That's a fan running because it's 97 degrees outside and 100% humidity. It's pretty warm today. So the first rifle I want to talk about is the Polish Beryl. Now it's named, from what I gather, from beryllium, and that's why I say Beryl. If I speak with an American accent, if that's offensive to whomever may be watching this, I apologize in advance. It's a Beryl. So this rifle is interesting. I did a video on these way back in the day. I believe I got the rifle from Atlantic Firearms, and I was really interested in it because the 5.56 Polish Beryl was known for its accuracy, being one of the more accurate AKs out there. And I certainly did find that to be the case in my original video. And later I would go on to piece the gun together to where you see it like it is today. So when they first started coming in the country, I want to say they were relatively expensive for AKs, and that is probably why people kind of were like, nah. And then the early guns that were coming in didn't have the rails on them, didn't have the proper stocks. They were neutered, and who really wants that? Who wants half of a rifle? And so I think they just ran into market problems with regards to price and the features that were missing from the gun. Ultimately, the rails would make it into the country, as would the adjustable length to pull stocks. And then people would start to assemble their rifles into complete Beryl clones. Now, I want to say they were on the market for several years, and I remember the last place on the internet, I believe it was Royal Tiger Imports, that had these listed in the configuration you see here. The price had dropped all the way down to, I want to say, $1,200. This was years ago. And I knew that was the last source of them. And right after it went out of stock, after it had been in stock for a year, after it went out of stock, boom, the prices on these rifles shot through the roof. And why is that? Well, the best I can ascertain, it's just human nature. People want things they can't have. And so when it's available and on the market, even when the price is coming down, people, and I've done this myself, keep putting it off, like, oh, it's really affordable right now, prices are dropping, I can pick one up later. And you put it off, you put it off, you put it off, and then boom, it's gone. Now all of a sudden you race out to try to get one before the prices skyrocket, and that causes the prices to skyrocket because you're not the only one doing it. That's about the only thing I can come up with the Beryl. When it comes to quality and stuff, this is made in the Radom factory. This is a very high quality AK, does chamber 5.56, has its own magazines, and yeah, just a really cool rifle. It's a shame that it's disappeared. Now, I do know that the folks over at Atlantic Firearms are bringing in 7.62x39 versions of this. I don't know that they're exact copies of the Beryl. The ones that I've seen aren't. They're not in the proper 5.56, but they have some of the features of the Beryl. The next rifle I want to talk about is the FS2000 from FN. Overall, this is probably one of the more poorly designed bullpups out there. Its claim to fame was it came up with a unique solution on what to do with that spent case, that empty case, after the gun had fired it. Traditionally speaking, bullpups would either eject out the right-hand side or the left-hand side, making it awkward for shooters of the opposite hand. So if you're right-handed, you want it to eject out the right side. If you're left-handed, you want it to eject out the left-hand side. So FN came up with this solution of throwing the spent case forward, out a chute here, and it would just kind of fall to the ground. Now, we did testing with this gun years ago and packed all the shell cases in there, closed the port, fired it, and it ejected all the spent cases. The guns were actually pretty reliable, but they're very awkward when you take them apart. A lot of plastic, a lot of polymer, but the US civilian versions of these had some really goofy features. And again, I say it's not a very well designed gun because it had some problems that we know of. One of the first problems I became aware of is that people were breaking their charging handles by being too aggressive with them. This is the charging handle. You can see it's open here for the recoil spring. Pull this to the rear and lift it up, and then it will lock in the open position. You can flip this up. This allows you to inspect your chamber. This one is a clone of the military version, which has basically a BB gun type scope inside this plastic housing that's 1.5 magnification and has a very European type reticle on it. To disassemble it, you pull all the guts out the rear. You separate the two halves, this half from this half, and this will go forward. You have a gas system up here that you'll notice with the sling, it's getting cut because this is the factory sling swivel. And when the sling lays over, it lays over the gas port and it just flame cuts your sling. That's one of the things that, you know, just irks me about the design. Not very well thought out at all. Another thing that was weird for the US market, FN did not make a 16-inch barrel, or actually, the rifle must meet 29 inches of overall length. And to accomplish that, FN, instead of making the barrel longer and putting 1/2 by 28 thread on it, they just used their standard military type barrels. They pinned and welded this muzzle device on the end, which limited you in terms of what you could do with it in terms of suppression and things like that. Now you could Form 1 this, turn it into an SBR, knock that pin out, and then you would have access to threads. But who wants to do that to a gun that's now worth like $4,000? When these things first came out, they were already expensive, over $2,000 when they disappeared from the US market. Then they shot up to $4,000, where I currently see some of the prices. This one, again, has that air gun type scope in it. The most popular one would have been the tactical version, which had a 1913 rail across the top that people could use for different accessories. Another thing that was really goofy about the design are the fire controls. This is your selector lever right here. Safe and fire. And then inside the magazine well, it has these wipes that follow the contour of a standard NATO Stenag magazine for 5.56. And these little holes right here are where the wipes are held in place by just melted polymer. And you can reach up inside there and feel them. You can only use this type of a magazine reliably in the gun. When you put it in, the wipes seal around the magazine. It has a very tight fit, so nothing, when this gun is closed up, nothing can really get into it. And that, I guess, was its selling point to the military, was the fact that it's a completely sealed system, but those wipes made it impossible, again, to use Lancer magazines, hex mags, whatever you want. To remove the magazine, you have a button right here, and you very much have to push up on that and pull this out, because those rubber wipes are going to grab that magazine and make it difficult to come out. Now, if you're looking at buying one of these on the used market, ask to see if the previous owner had pulled these rubber wipes out, because in my opinion it would decrease the value of the firearm. So I would imagine these go for more with their integrated optics. You can find the tactical versions with the pick rails on top out there relatively easily, but again, you're going to pay twice what they were originally selling for before they were no longer imported. So the next rifle I want to talk about is the MCX. I know what you're going to say, Mac, they still produce the gun. It's called the Vertice, MCX Vertice. It's true, but this gun is quite different than the current production Vertice. And this is something that SIG has become known for. SIG has become known for constant rolling changes and not changing the name of the gun, like A1, A2, A3, A4. You never know what you're going to get when you buy something like an MCX. It can have multiple generational changes inside of it, and you won't know. But this legacy rifle is no longer made. And what's interesting about this story is that this rifle came after the 5.56 series. Now, the 5.56 series had its, people that loved it, and it certainly had its detractors like myself. But then they got into the 5.56R with the 7.62x39 gun, had all sorts of functional problems. Then the XIs came along, they had problems, weren't in production for very long. And then they came up with the MCX. SIG would cancel all the other projects, the 5.56s and the XIs, and put all their eggs in the MCX basket. And so SIG kind of got a reputation for poor quality. Its quality was slipping, and a lot of that, I think, was driven by the fact that they're having so many different problems with their 5.56 rifle lines. And the MCX would later evolve into the best 5.56, I think, current production market gun that's available out there, that being the Vertice. But this legacy gun, boy, I don't even know where to start with the issues that this thing had. Probably the most prolific that many of you may remember is when Nut and Fancy did his video on the MCX. He had a catastrophic failure of the bolt and carrier group in the recoil system. It just spontaneously destroyed itself while firing and made a huge mess of the internals. SIG did do a recall. They've made a number of different rolling changes to these legacy rifles, but now we're on to the Vertice, and these are no longer in production. these are going up in price. People, because of the COVID stuff and more YouTubers talking about the Vertice driving the popularity up, people are snatching all the Vertices up they can get. So other folks were looking at the legacy rifles, even though they're going back in terms of quality and functionality and things like that, but they still want those legacy rifles like this because they were more affordable. But then when more people start doing that, that drives the prices of the legacy rifles up to the point where good luck finding one of these available for sale somewhere online. And that's what's interesting about this particular gun. It has a relative that's still very much in production. This one's no longer in production, has a number of different changes that were made to it, but it's still wildly popular, and the prices have gone up considerably. This is the original bolt carrier group of the MCX that allow you to easily identify it. It had a 300 blackout conversion kit, which I have, where it would replace this bar, and it says 300 blackout on it. This system is able to be disassembled, where the current system doesn't work like this. This is part of the system that failed. This little polymer piece back here broke, I believe, and all this came apart on Nut and Fancy. So if you're out there on the market and you're looking for either a legacy rifle like this or one of the new Vertices, you want to do your research to find out if it's new or not, because the newer the gun, the more likely it is to have all the updates. Older guns like this won't have the updates and can have hard failures in them. This one I don't shoot very much because this is pretty much the same rifle that Nut and Fancy had, and it didn't go back for the recall. As you guys know, I love the MCX Vertice, and I also love the Rattler, and this is a Canebreak. But despite its real appearance, this is actually a 177 caliber pellet gun. I picked this up for my son to shoot because it'd be fun for him, I thought, to go out in the backyard and shoot a Canebreak, much like my Rattler, which I personally shoot all the time. And having a pellet gun is a good thing for a kid. I wish I had a gun like this when I was a kid. Our pellet rifles were much different. We had the old power lines and things like that. But these very realistic guns are extremely cool. This thing is made out of aluminum. It has a port cover on it that doesn't open, has the flip-up SIG-type sights, which are adjustable. It has fake ambi controls over here. You have your ping pong paddle, then you have a mag release that doesn't work. The only mag release that works is right here, but you do have an ambi selector lever. And again, the sights do fold away. This is the magazine, and you see how it holds the 177 caliber pellets. In the stock is where you're going to find a huge CO2 canister. That's why this doesn't look like a regular SIG Canebreak side folding stock. It's because this is the air source for it. Insert the magazine, 30 pellets, put it on fire. What's amazing, at 50 yards away, this thing is zinging them right in there onto the challenge target. So yeah, Air Gun Depot is where I got this. They have all sorts of cool air guns. If you're looking for something for cheap practice or something to give to one of your kids to learn how to shoot on, check them out. It's pretty darn cool. I think this is awesome. Brownells did something that nobody else was really willing to do, and that was to clone retro rifles. They came out with an entire line of retro rifles based on the AR-15, M16, and AR-10. Now, there are a bunch of different models, and we're not going to talk about them all, but the AR-10 was of particular interest to me because this is the forefather of the US M16 AR-15. This is what Eugene Stoner originally conceived. It chambers .308, very lightweight, low pencil profile barrel, has the charging handle up here, and the carrying handle has the drum rear sight. I would say this thing is probably about 85–90% accurate in terms of being a reproduction of an AR-10. They even went so far as to clone the AR-10 waffle magazines. Now, there's always been a community out there that loves building retro rifle, clones of the Black Hawk Down guns, clones of Delta Force guns like Larry Vickers used. There's all these people out there that clone them, and Brownell saw that market, and they brought a whole bunch of stuff to bear on the market that was really kind of cool. Clones of the original Colt scope, and they also had an M203 grenade launcher, 37mm flare launcher, all sorts of cool accessories and everything for the retro line, which ultimately petered out. Now, I think probably because these things were fairly reasonably priced across the entire spectrum of the retro line for what you were getting, But I think what ultimately killed these was the collectors that wanted them snatched them up, and then they started to stagnate on the shelves. They were no longer selling, because this isn't a rifle that you're going to put an M-LOK rail section up here, make it a flat top, and put a red dot sight and lights and lasers and stuff on it. That's not what this gun's for. So this is for a collector, somebody like myself that wants to enjoy the experience of shooting an original AR-10, but doesn't have the money to go buy an original rifle. And so the people snatched them up that wanted them, and then they stagnated, and that caused the demise of the product line. Now try finding one of these things online for sale. Good luck. They command very high prices when they do pop up for sale, which isn't very often. And recently, I went looking for magazines just to see what they were going for. I saw somebody selling just one of these magazines, which is a clone. It's not even an original Armalite magazine, for $500. So it's really crazy how much the prices spike. People see them available on the Brownells website. They think, again, they procrastinate. They can put it off forever. Don't worry about it. It'll always be there. I want to pick up this right now. I'll get that later. And then boom, it's no longer in stock. It's out of production. And people are racing online to figure out, if they can get one or not. And that causes the prices to go up. And unfortunately, this BRN-10 is no longer made. A couple of different versions of it. I have the black one and the flat dark earth. I picked these up long before they went out of production. Matter of fact, I picked one up used from Brownells, and we drove through Iowa and stopped at the store. Yeah, pretty sad. It's a really, really cool rifle, and not too many people have the opportunity to shoot an AR-10, and this gave them that opportunity. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, where we talked about a few rifles that were kind of hard sells when they were originally available, but now that they're gone off the market, the prices have shot up. Again, that's just typical human behavior. People want what they can't have, and when things disappear, even if they're not popular at the time, they become popular after they're no longer in production. If you guys like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.